Amy Nieberger Miller visiting her brother's grave from the film Section 60, Arlington National Cemetery. John Alpert is co-director of the film along with Matt O'Neill. He's 15-time Emmy winner and the co-founder of Downtown Community Television here at the Firehouse. Section 60 is his third film in a trilogy of Iraq-related HBO documentaries following Baghdad ER and Alive Day Memories, Home from Iraq. We're also joined here in the studio by Paula Zwillinger, one of the grieving family members who appears in Section 60. Her son, Lance Corporal Robert Mininger, was killed in Fallujah June 6, 2005. We welcome you both to Democracy Now! Then we're going to go to Pennsylvania to be joined by another mom. John, why'd you do this film?
I think it's important if our country goes to war that we understand who's going to war, the sacrifices that they're making, the honor that they're earning for themselves, and the cost of the war. And especially now in this time of, oh my goodness, where's my pension going? There is a real cost to many families for this war, and we shouldn't forget it.
And of course, throughout the early parts of the war, there was all of this attention to the fact that the administration tried to hide the casualties, not allow photographs of the coffins of the soldiers that were returning, and in essence, sort of take those images out of the public consciousness.
Yeah, it's really interesting. We got full cooperation from the Army to make this film. I don't think this is something the Army itself is hiding. I think the Army wants the public to know who is paying the price for this war. We embedded, in the same way we embedded when we went to Iraq with the Army. We signed a contract, the same sort of rules of engagement, and we received full access to the cemetery. But there certainly has been a tug-of-war over the images of this war. The coffins, the press is normally separated from what is going on in Section 60. There's a rope line when there's a funeral that is basically half a football field away.
President Bush invoked the executive order that said you can't film, photograph, videotape the flag-draped coffins of soldiers coming home.
Well, if you would like to see, unfortunately, flag-draped coffins, they're in this documentary.
John, you filmed Paula's son's death in your previous film, in Baghdad ER. What did that mean to you, Paula? And talk about what this journey has meant for you.
Well, initially, when I was notified of the film, Baghdad ER, it was 5 months after the fact of losing my son. So, you know, you're talking about stepping forward in the grieving process, but then yet again, you're having your heart ripped open again. But as a parent, you can't turn that away, because this is an opportunity to really have any questions that you had unanswered, answered at that point in time through the film, along with the fact that it's your time to say your goodbyes. I didn't have a chance, you know, parents from war and our kids and casualties, we don't have a chance to say our goodbyes. And that's one of the saddest things. You know, you have this unknown, so many questions of the unknown hanging, and this was my opportunity to see that. And it's like John and Matt were literally able to put me at my son's bedside, and which was a gift. It gave me a lot of questions that I had initially unanswered for months, answered.
Right.
And plus the fact that I was able to say my goodbyes. So that gave me something that a lot of parents don't have, and that's an inner peace that in a time of war, because I knew what would happen. I was able to really connect with the nurses and the doctor and really talk to them, and the chaplain that was by his side.
And how did you then come in contact with John? Was this before Baghdad ER or afterwards?
No, I first met Matt and John after they notified me with Baghdad ER.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. She was driving back from work, I mean, ironically, as a nurse, right? And got a phone call from us basically saying that we had seen her son's fight for life and we had seen him die, and gave her the details of sort of a missing gap. I mean, you knew how he was shot, but after that, there really wasn't any information, and this basically filled in the last 17 hours of his life. Yeah,
I had a 17-hour black hole, if I call it, and that gave me a lot of answers.
Well, what's interesting is that for many families, and I don't know, you can ask Paula, the hole in their lives, someone never filled. And this is part of the documentary. The grieving process is something that doesn't, oh, you'll get over it, you'll get over it. I mean, that's what people say. They never get over it.
We're joined on the telephone by Patricia Genevieve. Her son, Private First Corporal Aaron Genevieve, was killed April 16th, 2007 in Baghdad. I met Patty at the opening of your film, John, the other day. The film will actually air on HBO on Monday night. Patty, what does Section 60 mean to you?
It's a sad situation to see all those graves down there and all the boys that have lost their lives to fight this war. It's very emotional for me when I go down there. You know, I try to put closure to my son's death as well as, you know, the other families that I know are going through exactly what I'm going through. And, you know, I met John and Matt down there when they were doing their documentary for Section 60.
And in the midst of all this, we see the election taking place in the United States. What does that kind of politicking mean for you? What do you think about this war?
I don't think this war should have ever started, you know, but they have to win it now, you know, for the men and women that have given their lives, you know, and the families too, because they've gave the ultimate sacrifice also.
See, it's interesting. There's a real sense of community there amongst the parents and the husbands, the wives. I don't know, can you speak about that, Paul, and what Section 60 would mean to somebody like you and Patty and what you find there? I know that the genesis of this film was when Sheila Nevins of HBO was calling Paula on the anniversary of her son's death, and Paula was standing beside her son's grave in Arlington crying. And that's what led us to go down there. But what's the community of Section 60 like?
Well, you know, when people go to normally, in a normal situation, when people go to a cemetery, they place their flowers, they spend a couple minutes, and they leave. In Section 60, it's not like that. Literally, we are bringing, and not that you want to think of it as a camp out, but you're spending hours there with your son or your daughter or your spouse because you just have that time that you want to connect with them yet. Sitting down and pulling up a chair, and then of course you see the other parents or the other kinship walk by, and there's just a connection there. You get to know them on a personal level. You get to know their kids on a personal level. You connect with them. You know, just, you know, you get it like a sixth sense as to who you really can really talk to, who you really can approach, who really doesn't want to talk.
Well, and obviously many of the soldiers are buried in other cemeteries. By what proportion of the total is there at Section 60?
It's 1 out of 10. 1 out of 10 men and women who died in Afghanistan or Iraq are buried in Section 60. And I've seen Patty there many, many times. How often do you go to Section 60, Patty?
I go down to Section 60 every 2 weeks.
And why?
To spend time with my son. You know, I think that's very important to me is in my healing process to spend as much time with him as I can, and I get to meet other Gold Star family members that are going through the same thing that I'm going through, so they understand how I'm feeling more than just somebody, you know, else would understand because they're going through the same thing I'm going through.
I met Shamara the other night, who's a mom who lost her boy in Iraq, and her twins are now going to Afghanistan to be part of the surge there. John Alpert, you are finishing this trilogy, or maybe it'll go on to be a quartet, I don't know, right? You've got Baghdad ER, you've got Alive Day Memories, Alive Day, the day when someone doesn't die, but maybe a limb is blown off. And now you have this film, Section 60, your feelings.
Well, I also have my plane ticket Wednesday night for Afghanistan. And we will be there at the same time that Samara's sons are there. In the same way that people don't see what's going on in Section 60, I don't think that people have been seeing what's going on in Afghanistan. If you ask them, I don't know what's going on, they're having the slightest idea. And I think that that's our duty and sort of our pleasure, to some degree, perverse pleasure, as reporters, to be able to go and see these things and bring that information back. So I'm on my way to Afghanistan. That's the...
To do what?
To try and understand what's happening there and try and help the American people understand it's far away. I mean, in the cacophony of the Wall Street collapse, nobody's talking about what, I mean, maybe your pension's down, but maybe your pension will come back. Your son's never coming back.
I want to thank you all for being with us. Thank you so much to Paula Zwillinger for driving in for this show and being there. Patricia Genevieve, thank you for talking to us from Pennsylvania. She lost her son, Private First Corporal Aaron Genevieve, in 2007 in Baghdad. Paula Zwillinger lost Robert Mininger, her son, in 2005. And John Alpert, thank you for all of your work. John Alpert, Emmy Award-winning filmmaker, headed to Afghanistan in just a few days. That does it for the show. Democracy Now! Produced by Mike Burke, Sharif Abdel-Quddus, Aaron Monte, Angela Cummings.